we'll just do questions and we can do it that way if everybody's fine with it. So who wants to ask the first question?
Can you give me an update on just how many cars are impacted at this point?
I can. Basically, as I was said in the story before, we went in and we looked at all of the cars that were model year 2015 through 2017 who had this particular engine. When we did a first pass, we took 15 of those cars off the road and decided that we were going to replace the engines. When we went through and finished the rest of the review of the cars, we noticed that some more had damages, and we made a decision today that we're going to replace engines on another 10 of those cars. And based upon the information that we found out in the last day, we're going to look at the another 11 cars, a total of 36 in total. We haven't made the decision on the other 11 cars yet, but given what we know now and the damage, even if it is slight damage, realize that these cars are less than 3 years old. So we probably are going to move forward and replace another 11 for a total of 36. We have already replaced 6. We'll have 10 completed by the end of this week. We hope to have another 10 completed by the end of next week. And then the remaining cars, if we do decide to change the engines, will probably take another couple of weeks.
So when you say looking at an additional 10, have you completed the check of the
We have. So the worst cars were the ones we took off first. They had the most damage. Another 11 had moderate damage, and we took those off the road because we assumed that we needed to do some work before we could put them back. And then based on the information that we found with the fuel and the damage to the cars, even though they don't have a lot of damage at this point, we probably, in abundance of caution, and I have Mario Guzman, my fleet manager here, who's made me a recommendation that we go ahead and replace the final 11 so that we have, in effect, these cars that are less than 3 years old without any damage at all in the engines. So while they're only slightly damaged, it's kind of our conclusion that we don't want to have even slightly damaged cars out on the road. So we are probably going to replace the final 11. We're just finalizing that decision.
How much is this going to cost?
They're about $6,000 a car. So if we replace all 36, you're talking about a little under $200,000.
And at this point, I know Ford is still investigating. Have you determined at all what it could be at this point?
We, based on some information we have and discussions with our fleet manager, have pretty much come to the conclusion that it's related to a contamination of the fuel. I'm going to let Mario get up here and kind of explain it in a little more detail. But basically, diesel fuel got mixed in with regular fuel at some point, and that causes damage, causes a carbon buildup, which causes the pistons to stick and allows oil to come into the engine, air take, and basically damage the vehicles. There's another agency, Miami-Dade, and also Miami Gardens, that we found out that have had similar problems. So we've been in contact with them. We believe at this point that it's related to the fuel supplier, whether it was at the port or whether it was somehow mixed up in a delivery. We're not sure, but that seems to be the problem, and that's kind of what we're focused on at this point.
So you think this is just an accident, basically, is what you're looking at?
Yeah, I certainly can't imagine that it was, done on purpose. Based on some discussions with my fleet manager, there are opportunities where if you don't clean out the transport vehicles or even the tanker, it's possible that they could get mixed together. And it seems to be that this high-performance engine is especially susceptible to this problem based on what's happened. And so we believe that is the root cause at this point. We won't know for sure. We've asked Ford to help us put together a report. We are working with Miami-Dade to try and evaluate what they're seeing on their end. But that seems at this point to be the conclusion that we're coming to.
Where do you get the fuel?
We get it on a state contract from a company called Mansfield. It comes through the Port of Miami and is distributed on a state contract to us through that process.
Are you going to continue using them?
We actually, I'll let Mario talk about that, but we actually, in an abundance of caution, because we weren't sure exactly how the supply chain would be affected, we bought fuel recently from another vendor, and until we get this resolved, we're going to continue to do that.
So if it is possibly the fuel supplier, why hasn't it impacted other cars then? Why just the Ford Interceptor cars?
Well, we're going to look at the rest of our fleet, but as I said before, I think that these particular engines, they're high-performance engines. Mario, I'll let him talk more technically about why, but because of the way these engines are made and the way they're manufactured and the way they operate, they're more susceptible to it, apparently.
Is the cost then that you were talking about for replacing these engines, is that going to fall on the taxpayer since it might not be Ford's fault anymore?
Well, should we conclude that the fuel vendor delivered us fuel that was not, not what we had ordered, we will pursue action against the fuel vendor. We need to finalize and put all our records together, but that would be my recommendation, is that we would look for them to reimburse us.
When do you expect to have a final outcome of that?
Well, again, it's a process that we need to go through. We need to take some of the engines up to Detroit. They're going to tear them apart. They're going to verify what we think has happened. We'll wait for that report to come back. It could be a few weeks.
But isn't then this fuel supplier also supplying fuel for other agencies here in the area? Because I haven't heard from other agencies right here in our area.
I don't know exactly who they deliver fuel to. All I can tell you is that the two agencies that we've talked to have fuel through the same, they're not exactly the same company, but they all buy oil from the same group. One brother owns one company, another brother owns another company, and those are the only related issues at this point. I only know of two agencies. For all I know, there could be other ones out there that haven't really put the dots together on the process and what's happened. So I can just tell you what we know at this point.
Do you know, are they supplying fuel specifically for city governments, or are they supplying just regular gas stations?
I'm going to let Mario. Mario, why don't you come up and have a conversation? Mario probably knows more of the details than I do on that particular subject, and I'll turn it over to him and let him answer that.
Awesome. Hello,
Will you say and spell your name for us?
Mario Guzman, General Service Manager, Mario-Guzman.
So do you know if that Mansfield, I think, is the supplier for you guys, are they supplying fuel for just regular customers as well, or is it just mostly governmental agencies?
Not sure. They are awarded on the state contract, the Florida state contract, so I would assume other agencies are using them as well.
What was the problem? How did you guys figure out there was a problem with the engines?
At first, like Jeff indicated, they went down hard. They just stopped working. And then we started filing, kind of seeing the same similar oil in the intake, excessive carbon. It looked like the vehicles had, if you open them up, it looked like they had 300,000 miles, just a lot of gunk and stuff inside. And just good old-fashioned detective work, calling our contacts throughout the state of Florida, and they were running into the same thing. And Miami-Dade helped us out big time with that one. They kind of cued us in on checking the fuel and stuff. So when we had the same exact symptoms that Miami-Dade has.
Do you know how many of their cars were affected?
Not sure. I know it's, I think they had about 10 down, if I'm not mistaken, but they had that accurate number. I wasn't sure.
Tony Dorsch reported 60.
Yeah.
That was what was in
60?
Yeah. And there were some units that were down that I think Jeff went out and saw one. You wouldn't even tell. They're running perfect. They're running great. But our technicians were able to actually go inside and see the oil accumulating.
So what are the officers driving in the meantime?
They're driving still their patrol vehicles. I mean, they still have a significant amount of units in their fleet.
Is it for you, have you ever seen anything like this in your career?
First time. This is, it was cross-contamination, so the fuel was contaminated. So depending on certain vehicles, it runs fine. With these particular direct injection engines, it's causing the problems.
And just to see that kind of widespread issue, is that something that took you
No,
guys-
not to that. I mean, it was 2 weeks of a hard time. A lot of phone conversations with Mr. Green in 2 weeks. But yeah, it was interesting to say the least. It happened over a 2-week span, which was concurrent with the other agencies as well. We shared the same problems over the same 2 weeks.
And at this point, you can rule out sabotage.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right.
Thank
Awesome.
you.